Welcome in, everybody, to another week of UFL Weekly, our penultimate show of the season. And if you don't know, penultimate is second to last, I think. It's either second to last or second best. Either way, all that to say, we've got one last episode coming out next week, championship recap, because this week we're previewing the UFL Championship. Regardless, I am Kyle Krajewski, joined by Mr. Beautiful, Zach Hole. Zach, welcome to Championship Week. How you doing, my man?
Thank you, and welcome to you as well. And I just want to give you a shout out for not only talking about XFL or UFL football here, but we're also talking about vocabulary words. That's new to me. So put penultimate down in everyone's notebooks and your notes app at
Penultimate,
home, and
last one in this, last but one in a series of things. Second
there
last
you go. So this is the penultimate episode. But
of the
anyway, excited to
2025
be
season.
here. Excited for a entirely UFL championship matchup, which we will get into in a little bit here. But yeah, a lot of fun things to talk about this week, and we were just talking a little bit before the show, but we've they've revealed all the awards so far except for the MVP. So we're kind of sitting in suspense just as much as everyone else is as we're recording this, and I'm sure once this goes out, the MVP will probably be announced, but we can still give some fun speculation on where our heads are at. So let's get into it.
Yes. So as Zach alluded, they've announced yearly awards for just about every notch except MVP, and we are recording this Friday morning. Time, I'm looking at the clock, 9:40 a.m. I have a strong feeling at 10:30 p.m. or not p.m. 10:30 a.m. So in literally 50 minutes, they'll announce this award, just as they've done every day leading up to today. So MVP, we're talking with question marks here, uh, but we can run through these other ones real quick. We'll start assistant coach of the year. I think assistant coach and coach of the year are very, very well deserved awards here for these
Hmm.
two guys. Assistant coach, DC Defenders offensive coordinator Fred Case, uh, basically led the top offense in the league in total yards in DC this year. Can't argue with that. We have
Hmm.
the coach of the year, DC Defenders head coach Shannon Harris stepped in this season as interim, as Reggie Barlow basically week prior to the season stepped away to take the Tennessee State head coaching position. Uh, so Shannon Harris stepped in as interim, and basically, I mean, look at it. Look at them now. They're in the championship.
Hmm.
So he started the season as the assistant coach, or I guess started the year as the assistant coach, began the season as head coach, and look at that. Well deserved coach of the year honors there. Defensive player of the year, St. Louis linebacker, St. Louis Battlehawks linebacker, Peter Taumapanu was the XFL Defensive Player of the Year 2 years ago, and returns basically receiving similar honors here in the UFL.
Hmm.
League leader in sacks, three forced fumbles, two fumble recoveries. Dude was just a defensive monster this year.
Definitely.
Offensive Player of the Year, which this is where it gets a little interesting. Offensive Player of the Year, Michigan Panthers quarterback Bryce Perkins.
Hmm.
Fourth in the league in passing yards, tied for second in both passing and rushing touchdowns. And we know just from watching him play when he was on the field, this team. I mean, they're in the championship. This Michigan Panthers team was dominant. Offensively, he was the well deserving offensive player of the year player. So shout out Bryce Perkins, way to go. But then, wait a minute, MVP's empty. Does this mean potentially? I think it's up in the air, but I think it's well known that the two candidates for MVP, Jordan Teamu, Bryce Perkins, facing off in the championship game this weekend.
Hmm.
But with Bryce Perkins earning Offensive Player of the Year, do you think that opens up the door for Teamu being awarded MVP? Or do you think Perkins is nailing down both of these awards? Uh, Not to say that's impossible, but that's kind of crazy. But what Zach? What do you think here?
It's a little unheard of, especially what we saw last year in the UFL. We saw Hakeem Butler win the Offensive Player of the Year, followed by Adrian Martinez winning the MVP. I think it would be a little bit more clear to us if this Offensive Player of the Year had gone to perhaps a running back or a wide receiver or even a
Oh yeah.
tight end. Someone that was a highly productive piece of their offense, but seeing this go to Bryce Perkins does kind of make you question is he gonna get both? I mean, even in the NFL, we hardly ever see that. I can't remember any time recently that we have seen that. But uh, to me, I think that this does insinuate that we're probably going to see a Teamu MVP here. I think that they wanted to award Bryce Perkins with a
With an award.
notification of his accomplishment and just something to, to signify that yes, he was the offensive player of the year. He was the best offensive player in the league. I don't think anyone can doubt that. But he also was MIA for a couple weeks with an injury, and Teamu continued to step into that role and thrive as starting quarterback. So to me, I think that it probably will go to Teamu, despite I think the stats probably pointing towards Bryce Perkins, but it's hard to argue with a full season of longevity.
Yeah, I think the only point I have towards, like, for me personally, picking or thinking it might still be Perkins is Perkins was the lone quarterback on the all UFL team. I think it's a little
Mm,
difficult for a player, not impossible, but I think it's difficult for a player to win MVP but not be on the all UFL roster. But
hmm
maybe that's just them, giving Bryce Perkins his flowers, but still saying like, no, Teamu is still best. It's weird. I think that's where I'm getting stuck. However, either way, offensive player of the year, hard to argue against Bryce Perkins earning that.
hmm
Same with Peta winning that defensive player of the year. Just MVP being a
hmm
toss up. It's like question.
Yeah, it's just I don't really know what to make of it. I mean, like you just alluded to, Kyle, that Perkins was the only quarterback on the all UFL team, so like it's just kind of hard to think about it that way. But I mean, you could see Teamu's got his team to the UFL championship. I mean, there's definitely signs pointing both directions here. Clearly,
I like
the
the.
go ahead.
I was just saying I like the concept of, hey, whoever wins this game, you got MVP. Which I mean, I hate because I don't like counting wins as a quarterback stat. However, I think it's just like another battle dome, like just like you want it that much, you want that award that
hmm
much more. Go out and win this game. Uh,
Yeah,
which is tricky.
it's just they've kind of the selection committee, the voting committee has kind of put themselves in a bind with it unless they do plan to give Perkins both. That I think that that's really
Yeah,
the only outcome where there's really no gripes with outside of him winning both. That would be the only argument, but it's just it's strange the way that they've set it up. It poses challenges for them for sure.
it
Either way they
does.
go,
Either way, I think no matter where it goes, whoever it goes to, well deserved. I can't
definitely.
argue positives and negatives for both. I could hardly argue a negative for either side. I can just name, I think Teamu and Perkins are both incredibly well deserving. And who knows? Maybe they throw us a curveball and it's neither of them. That'd be interesting.
That would be interesting for sure.
All right, quick weekly recap because we both know who won these games. Last week we saw the conference championship games be played. The Michigan Panthers dominated. This game was just in their hands from the start. 44-29 over the Birmingham Stallions to win the USFL conference. And then the DC Defenders just kind of kept the St. Louis Battlehawks at bay, winning 36-18. That game, watching it, it was like DC was in, they scored, and then they had possession of the ball again, and you just knew it was like, no, they've got this. Uh,
hmm
Battlehawks just struggled to play from behind, and it showed. So DC and Michigan move on to this UFL championship.
Yeah, it was kind of nice. I think that these were two. I don't know, nice, but they were clear cut winners in these
Yeah,
games. There
yeah,
was There was no
Good games
closeness
though.
about it. Definitely good games, and we didn't see the Battlehawks or the Stallions roll over
Nope.
by any stretch, but the Panthers and defenders definitely went out there and won the games and won them, um, handily, as we could see from the final scores, and it was pretty cool to see a high scoring affair in
Yeah.
the conference championship weekend as well, because we've just been talking about it. The offense has just been getting better and better and better and better as the season has gone, and this was just
Yeah.
another kind of example of that in the conference championship week here.
Yeah. I mean, and we'll talk about it in here in just a minute, but even just like betting odds have just been like up and up and up and up for over unders as the season goes
Mhm,
on. It's like as the season goes on, these offenses click and it's just points galore when everything's going right. So when we
mhm.
see essentially the four best teams go out and onto the field, we see four great teams play, two great games,
Mhm.
and it shows. We had two incredible matchups this past weekend, basically priming us for what is hopefully an awesome championship game.
Absolutely. It should be. It 100% should be. So, Kyle, why don't you introduce it? And then I think maybe I'll talk about my Panthers a little bit. You could talk about the defenders and we'll roll from there.
All right. So we've got championship weekend. We have DC Defenders versus the Michigan Panthers in St. Louis Saturday, tomorrow, June 14th at 8 p.m. We've got a lovely night game, prime time. Michigan goes into this game favored -3.5. Over under first of this season. Over under set to 50.5. This is our first game over 50. Zach, I can remember a few weeks ago being like, oh, we've got games with over unders in the 40s now. We've hit the 50 mark. Championship weekend. Uh, we're in. We're pumped. We're ready for it. Both games last weekend hit this 50.5 over, especially that Michigan Panther Stallions game. Booyah.
Hmm.
Uh, just a quick note, these are two different teams, but back in week 6, the Panthers won the only matchup between these two teams 38-14. Again, hitting that over 50. Uh, but that was a pretty strong win by Michigan. That was when it was like, all
Hmm.
right, the Panthers might be turning the leaf here. They're dominating. So without further ado, these teams breaking it up. I'll preview our DC team. Zach can hit his Michigan team. DC, we got this. Led by Jordan Teamu at quarterback, MVP candidate. He is the most aggressive downfield passer in the UFL, led the league in 20 plus yard attempts. He's comfortable under pressure, uh, basically just knows this Fred Case system. He doesn't run as much, but he's mobile when he's needed. Running back Deion Jackson, a little bit of a
Hmm.
late dominator here in the league. Last week he had 110 yards, 2 touchdowns. But this Michigan team, Zach, and you'll talk about it. This Michigan team is pretty dominant up front. So this will be a tricky one up front in the trenches here for the DC offense. But luckily, this DC offense knows how to throw it deep. Uh, Wide receiver Cornell Powell, uh, touchdown machine. We have the basically this whole wide receiver core for DC that just gets stronger this week. I'm looking at the depth chart right now. We got Braylon Sanders, Chris Rowland, Cornell Powell, Ty Scott gets healthy this week, Seth Williams in the slot, and then you can't forget tight end Briley Moore. This is just a team that is set up for deep throws, deep receptions, and slot little slant catches when you need them. Uh, this defense, one of the strongest secondaries in the league. We got Baker, Thompson, uh, Ojemudia. They're vulnerable up front for the run game, so maybe we might see a lot of Bryce Perkins running in this one. The edge rushers Roberson, Wallace, and Mintz will try to contain the Michigan RPO, which they know they got to stop. They held St. Louis to 18 last week, but they get a clearly much tougher quarterback matchup here in Bryce Perkins. So Zach, tell me what to watch for on this Michigan side.
Well, we will start out with the man himself. We'll start out with
Yeah,
Bryce Perkins, who is, I would say, probably established himself as the most dual threat oriented quarterback in the whole league. He had over 200 passing against the Stallions last week, and he even added 35 on the ground, passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown. So clearly, that dual threat is a big part of what makes the Michigan Panthers as successful as they are. They do run an RPO oriented offense, which is kind of where he makes some of his bread and butter on that. And he's just a slippery runner. When he has the ball in his hands, he's not easy to bring down, which just makes the whole makes the whole thing a whole lot more difficult. You know, if it was some skinny quarterback back there
Yeah.
running around, and you could just wrap him up, that but I mean, the guy is built. He plays somewhere between a running back and a quarterback. So he's just incredible and takes his team to a whole another level. However, they are also as efficient as they are in the run game, thanks in part to Toa Tawa, who is just come on as an absolute force for them lately. He popped up for them about mid-season, and he has 9 touchdowns since then. And he is just he reminds me of like almost Mike Tolbert from back in like the 2000s and the early 2010s, where he is just like this bowling ball that's impossible to bring down. So he adds in this hard nosed kind of downhill run game aspect to this team as well. They actually had kind of a surprise name pop up this week with tight end Cole. I don't want to mispronounce Hikutini.
Hickaty.
Hikatini. And that was a big deal for them because Gunnar Oaks didn't have a reception this past week,
Yep.
and was not really existent in the pass game. So for Hikatini to pop up and to become another asset for Bryce Perkins in the pass game, that was a really big deal, I thought, as well. Now, defensively, the Panthers are definitely nothing to overlook either. They, as you mentioned, Kyle, are incredible in the trenches. They actually only had, I was looking at the box score from last week. They only had 41 total tackles in that game compared to Birmingham's 72. Now, that just goes to
Yeah.
kind of speak to the offenses, who was on the field and who was off the field. But as a defense, you want to have less tackles. You want to be, that means you're doing your job. You're getting the other offense off the field and keeping the ball in your quarterback's hands. So, but Kai Nakua is a force for them. He had an interception this week. He had 2 pass breakups. And Arnold Tarpley the third also had an interception and 3 pass breakups. So their secondary clearly is a pretty solid unit as well. So I think just top to bottom, this team really provides kind of a balanced attack between the trenches and their pass defense on the defensive side of the ball, between Bryce Perkins being a dual threat, Toa Tawa, an incredible receiving core, and some tight ends that have come into the mix as of late. They, to me, are just a very complete team, and I think that seeing that they are favored, I think that that's kind of what we're seeing reflected by Vegas here. So I guess all that is just to kind of come back to our point. Kyle, who are you taking? Michigan minus 3.5, and the over under is set at 50.5. Give me your thoughts.
Oh God. I think right off the bat I'm taking this over. I think I think that's the easy pick, and that may actually be the one that money may be placed on because I think we're seeing points in this game regardless of who's scoring. So I give me some points. So over 50 and a half. That's like uh, that's gonna happen. Ooh, 3.5.
Are you going to be a homer? Are you going to do it?
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
All right. All
DC
right.
plus 3.5. I think this team last week looked strong. They looked strong in a system that it looked like they may have almost fallen out of touch with in the previous weeks. Um, so DC kind of coming in and being dominant in the XFL championship game last week gives me a lot more confidence in them going into this one. Um, yeah, give me DC plus 3.5. Who knows? I think they could win it. Maybe that's the homer in me be coming out a little bit more, but I think we're in for a great game. Whether it's a close one or a DC win, give me DC plus 3.5.
Well, I can't argue with you. I want this to be a close game also. I want this to just be an awesome matchup between these two teams. And I really don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to be. I actually think it's more probably common that it's going to be than a blowout either way. So these two teams are clearly deserving of being here. They've duked it out all season.
Yeah.
Obviously, have found themselves in a championship situation. So I'm gonna go with my team here. I'm gonna take Michigan minus 3.5. It does scare me that's a decent amount of points in a championship game here, in a game that I expect to be pretty tight. So, but I am going to go with my pick, with my gut, with my heart, I guess, and go with Michigan minus 3.5. And I will also take the over. Kyle, give me points. We love the points here, and realistically, I think for these two offenses, it's not out of the realm of possibility to end up both in the mid 20s somewhere, and this hits without a doubt. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep. I'd like to note, it's funny how this worked out. Picks wise all season, you and I have found ourselves dead set 40 and 42 as our
Yes,
record
we have.
throughout the season. 40 and 42. And if there's a couple missing picks, there's been a few pushes.
Mhm.
So this week, if either of us goes 2-0, we've hit break even on the season. And this week we'll decide which one of us had the better season in our picks. Like it's gonna be we're gonna be one pick apart, which is wild. It's gonna be beautiful. Um, so yeah, that's DC versus Michigan. For you watching, I got a few things to what to watch. Can DC's front seven stay disciplined? Does Michigan's secondary hold up well against this DC pass attack? Or does Michigan secondary hold up against this DC pass attack? Uh, does DC have an answer for Tua Tawa on early downs and in the red zone?
Mhm.
At the goal line, especially. And will Perkins continue to be unstoppable in space? Because that dude is crazy. All that to say, we've got an incredible game coming up here. Michigan versus DC in St. Louis for the UFL Championship. It's glorious. It's a glorious weekend. I
Mhm.
couldn't think of a better matchup. I think this was what we've been primed to see for a few weeks now. And every team just looks like they're firing all cylinders. Everybody's seemingly healthy. We're in for a lot of points. Let me just say that.
Mhm.
And tune in like 2 hours when they announce the MVP. We won't. You won't hear it here. We'll probably react to it to next week. But
Definitely, yeah.
all that to say, that's the UFL Championship. We'll talk next week about a recap of it all and kind of what to look forward to in the off season. There's a bunch of rumors that we might just touch on with expansion and such that we
Mhm.
will kind of give our notes on. But again, this is our penultimate episode of the 2025 season. So next week will be our last one for the season, barring any surprise recordings. If there's any huge news, we'll hop on the mic and discuss. So this is it for the championship game. Zach, it was an absolute pleasure chatting with you again, as always. And everybody listening, if you're watching us, find us on podcast platforms. if you're listening, find us on YouTube, UFL Weekly. You'll find us. Thank you again for tuning in. Talk to you next week.
See you.